One of the biggest realities in audit today is the explosion of data. Organizations are dealing with more systems, more transactions, and more complexity than ever before. With that in mind, our old, dated manual processes are no longer sufficient. There's also growing regulatory pressure. Auditors are expected to provide transparency and reproducibility in everything that they do. At the same time, business expectations are shifting. It's no longer enough for auditors to just deliver findings. Stakeholders expect them to provide insights that inform business decisions. Last but not the least, of course, there are the legacy bottlenecks. Many audit teams still use spreadsheets and outdated tools that really slow them down and hinder collaboration. With all these factors, one thing is certain that auditors need modern skill sets and a modern toolkit. With that in mind, we've created a three-part webinar series called The Skills of a Modern Day Auditor. Today, in part one, we'll cover how to escape legacy tools for smarter audits. On October 14th, in part two, we'll discuss how to make continuous auditing a reality for your organization. And then on November 18th, in part three, we'll discuss how to use and govern AI effectively in audit. Each webinar in this webinar series builds on top of the last one. So all the things that we'll discuss today will set the foundation for what's to come next. So since this is the first time, this is the first webinar in our webinar series, we wanted to spend some time to level set and understand how our products help auditors. On the left-hand side, you see the Knime Analytics platform, which is our open source offering. With Knime Analytics platform, auditors can build their own audit tests visually without having to code. At the same time, they can connect to hundreds of data sources from SAP to Excel to databases and cloud systems, thereby reducing the reliance on IT. At the same time, every audit test that an auditor builds using the Knime Analytics platform comes with an inbuilt audit trail. On the right-hand side, we have the Knime Business Hub, which is our commercial offering. The Knime Business Hub takes things one step further. It centralizes and allows audit teams to reuse these tests across audits, regions, and entities. It provides a centralized governance framework that ensures that all audit processes are consistent and compliant across the entire organizations. So, in short, with the Knime Analytics platform, auditors can innovate, whereas the Knime Business Hub allows auditors to reduce the risk associated with that innovation. With that quick overview of Knime, I wanted to introduce our speakers. We are joined today by Muzeebur Rahiman Shaik, Senior Manager GRC AI and Analytics at Crowe Oman, who will be sharing his experience and insights around modernizing the audit function. We're also joined by Dashiell Brookhart, data scientist at Knime, who will be showcasing a demo of the Knime for Audit Starter Pack, which we have recently created. So what do we plan to cover today? So we'll start off with a presentation and discussion with Muzeeb around how auditors can escape legacy tools. We'll then introduce the Knime for Audit Starter Pack and show a quick demo of how the Starter Pack works. And lastly, we'll have the audience Q&A, where we'll address some of the questions that have been submitted via the Q&A tab. With that, without further ado, I would like to invite Muzeeb to join us on stage.
Thank you, Tejas.
Hey, Muzeeb.
Can you see? Thank you, Tejas. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Muzeebur Rahiman Shaik. I'm working in Crowe Oman as a senior manager and a practice head for GRC and AI analytics. I have more than 20 years of experience. I have supported many clients in Oman and across Middle East by building data analytics solutions for internal audit. I have built a couple of business process areas like purchase to payment, order to cash, general ledger, third party, so related to audit analytics. Today, I will be sharing my experience on how auditors, even without deep technical background, can achieve their audit objectives by using the right analytic platform. Let's talk about internal audit objectives and challenges. In any scenario, assurance has always been the foundation of the audit. But traditionally, it has been backward looking and sample driven. In today's environment, assurance alone not enough. Board are expecting more. Boards are expecting insight, real-time visibility into risk, and broader coverage across the process. This is where data analytics platform plays critical role. Instead of testing a sample, we can test entire population, giving management and stakeholder far greater confidence. Moreover, audit need to move to foresight by anticipating the risk before they materialize. This is where advanced analytics like machine learning and AI, Gen AI play a critical role. In summary, by moving from assurance to insight and foresight, internal audit positions itself as a true strategic partner to the business. Now let's talk about the challenges. The biggest challenges auditors face in day-to-day uh, operations. The first challenge is coverage. Auditors still rely on heavily on manual sampling, where means they don't always look at full population of transaction. So coverage is the one of the biggest challenge because of we more rely on the sampling. As a result, some of the most critical exceptions, if you do the sampling, like duplicate or even fraud payments, can easily missed. So we need 100% population before going to the audit. Another biggest challenge is completeness and accuracy. If the data is incomplete or inaccurate, auditor insights are weak, and the overall audit quality reduce. That is the one of the challenge auditors always face, the completeness of the data and the accuracy of the data. Another biggest challenge is doing pulling the data manually from the ERP systems, and you again were using the spreadsheets to append the data to prepare the data, which not only takes time, it increase chances for the human error related to efficiency. Now let's talk about audit tools and techniques evolved a lot over the time. Things started when I have started my practice also. I used to work on the more rely on the spreadsheet, for sampling, for ad hoc testing, using spreadsheet. Then this computer assisted audit tools like ACL, IDEA, basically the sibling tools came into picture. These often, the problem with the computer audit assistant tools is there is a limitation. So limitations on the data connectors. For an example, if you need to connect, or extract from the data from the PDF, or it could be from the OCR, you need add-on. And if you are connecting with multiple data sources, you need ETL tools like Informatica, data stage. These are the techniques required for the auditor, but these are were not enough. For after doing the analysis for the exception management, for the reporting, you need to again integrate with Power BI, Tableau, like reporting tools or exception management. If you want to send the exceptions, you have to send manually by email, or you need another tool to communicate with the auditee to get the clarifications from the auditee. So this is where most audit function are currently, whatever function. But more advanced audit functions doing more advanced techniques, they are adopting continuous auditing. Because instead of doing, for an example, I have done purchase to payment audit for the first quarter. I have developed scripts, or I have connected to the database. I have entire exception, the communication flow. Then I want to reuse where continuous auditing will help the auditors. Quarterly they can see the control weaknesses, and you can report to the management. Now auditors are also exploring on predictive analytics and machine learning to forecast the risk and potentially fraud scenarios, to identify the frauds in preventive measures. And most exciting one today is Gen AI. So all auditors, everyone is learning Gen AI tools, and know how to integrate in audit function. So these Gen AI tools helping auditors to automate their routines and for the generate the insight. This is what modern audit functions are doing today. Now let's have a look at how Knime Analytic Platform support auditors and end-to-end Knime. So if you see on the screen on the bottom of the slide, you can see most of the connectors where Knime has more than 300 connectors. It could be Excel, it could be log, it could be PDF, or it could be recipe. Nowadays it could be data is on cloud. Regardless, any database you can communicate, like SAP. One of the popular one is SAP. So on the bottom, these are the needed for the auditors, typical need by the auditors. From there, if you see the left hand side, Knime support, how is Knime is supporting the audit function. You can perform ad hoc testing using drag and drop Knime notes and workflows, and you can perform, you know uh, you can push your audit results into audit management system, and you can handle exceptions. Instead of a disjointed tool, you can communicate directly to the auditee. You can get the responses from the auditee on the exceptions, and you can report to the senior management dashboard, everything from the audit management system using Knime. And you can schedule continuous auditing by scheduling workflows. It could be daily or weekly or near to real time. You can use continuous auditing and machine learning. Now, even this is very, very important point I want to emphasize on the non-technical users. Users means as the auditors, you can build ML models for fraud detection. You can also integrate GenAI into Knime workflows. For an example, to summarize exceptions, draft narratives, to explain anomalies. So GenAI will help, for the auditors within the. This is we call as a data-driven approach. So usually auditors rely on the, observations or sampling, or rely on the reports. Here, independently, auditor using Knime can connect to the databases, regardless it could be structured, unstructured data. Then you can use in our day-to-day functions, as a ad hoc analysis into audit management. On the right hand side, you can see if within the organization nowadays regulations are more forcing from the government side, and companies are adopting frameworks. So in the Knime, you can within the workflow, you can integrate analytics to test directly with these frameworks and compliance, so that every analytic is traceable to a control or a regulations. Here, I would like to share my recommendations on how the audit function is modernized. We start with self-service analytics, where auditor can build their own analytics independently using its Knime Analytic platform. You connect to the data, import the data, do your analysis. There is a number of notes available for the auditors. It is a visual interface where you don't need to struggle with the scripting. So this is the first step. Then we move to centralized repository where you can reuse. Already we have developed the workflows, you can anyone can reuse, and you can keep it as centralized repository. When come to the AI and Gen AI models, they can reviewed, validated, and controlled for the audit readiness, ensuring they meet governance standard. And audit test can be scheduled and model can be deployed. And the beauty is you can develop the data apps uh, accessible across the audit function for continuous control monitoring. With this path to success, Knime help modernize the strengthen the audit function. Thank you.
Thank you, Muzeeb. I think that was a great start to what we want to discuss today, right? So maybe what we would like to do next is build on some of the ideas that you introduced as part of the presentation. So maybe we take a few minutes to explore the audit process step by step. So let's start at the beginning of an audit, right? When we talk about the beginning of an audit, what are the typical types of data that auditors interact with?
Yeah, auditors typically deal with a different variety of the data. Uh, Typically, like order work with two main types of uh, data. One is structured, another one is unstructured. Structured data includes things like financial data, ERP, transactional records, or ERP outputs, or system generated reports. That is organized. For it come from the DBMS or RDBMS where you can easily input and you can analyze. Then unstructured data such as contracts. I want to review the SLA, service level agreement, or it could be logs. As auditor, I want to review the logs and scanned documents. So in practice, auditor need to use both structured and unstructured data.
All right, Museem. Thank you for that. So in terms of based on your experience working with auditors, what would you consider some of the popular data sources that auditors typically use?
Yeah, in day-to-day operations, the focus is usually more on the if you talk about ERPs such as like SAP, or it could be MS Dynamics or Oracle, but it doesn't stop there because auditors also work with Excel, CSV, or it could be XML files or OCR, as I mentioned in the previous slides. PDF reports. Yeah, and nowadays with this, the way environments are evolving, so we also see data is coming from the cloud platforms and social media, REST APIs. So the range of sources is getting broader all the time.
Got it. And what is the typical process? Like, how do auditors get access to this data?
Yeah, typically auditors are the third line defense means they request to the second line to the IT. Typically, they request data for their audits through a formal data request form. Like for an example, I'm doing the this quarter audit. I focused on the vendor analysis, so I have to request the data to IT. Could you please share last year whatever period which I am doing the audit, could you please extract and give me? So he has to give the audit objective because from IT has to spend time get the data to share it to auditors. The IT team usually extract this information from the ERP systems, or it could be SAP like Oracle, and then they will share through Excel, CSV, or whatever format again to auditors. The challenge is that these extracts often depends on IT, which may not always align with audit timelines. For example, I want to do the audit this quarter when I request, the challenge is the timeline. So as a result, auditors can lose valuable time simply waiting for the data, which delays in the audit process.
Got it. Understood. And how does, from your experience, how does Knime help with making sure that auditors get access to the right data at the right time?
Yes, with Knime, we can connect to the direct to the means Knime has over 300 connectors, built-in connectors. it could be SAP, ERP, CSV, just and through drag and drop interface, you can connect to any database. This removes dependency on IT, and let's audit start immediately, to move forward. Yes.
Got it. Understood. So let's say that now the auditors get access to the data that they need. Is the data usually clean or do you see data quality issues?
It's a good question. Once auditor, gain the data, or once they get the access to the data, the next step is checking the quality, data quality. It's a common issue. It could be corrupt data, it could be incomplete data, or even field definitions. Sometimes data types, it don't match, like wrong data types, date formats, date, the date DDMMY date format, field length. So if those are not caught early, the whole analysis can be compromised. So data quality checking or data verification is upfront, is critical and very important to avoid inaccurate conclusions.
Got it. And can you tell me, like, how does Knime help with these data quality checks?
Yeah, Knime makes these data quality checks much easier because of, instead of writing, scripts in the previous, as I mentioned in the slides, we have computer audit assistant tools. Instead of depending IT that you will import the data, still you have to struggle writing, or it could be from SQL, queries, different formats. You have to import the data. So the um, Knime makes data quality very easier because of, instead of writing scripts, you can just drag and drop the notes. The workflow documents, that means the workflow documents is a step by step process. So you can see the visual interface so that you will not miss. For example, I have imported the data, then I'm checking the data quality and null values. Then I'm moving, then I'm checking any corrupted data. Like you can see step by step in duplicate values, or it could be the complete, whether I have right complete data or not. So yeah, it works even across very large data sets and much faster doing this instead of manually with Excel and other tool.
Understood. Understood. So let's now say auditors get access to the data, they address all the data quality issues. We've seen a lot of auditors rely on scripting tools like ACL or IDEA, for example, to run their analytical tests. So, based on your experience, what are some of the challenges associated with working with these scripting tools?
Yes, as I mentioned in the previous question, I have answered a couple of points. The main challenge is that the scripting tools like ACL, IDEA, or it could be SQL Server, or it could be, it's all scripting skills, right? So not easy for the auditor, can use them easily. Auditors are non-technical, so take time to learn the scripting. If they are not familiar with the scripting, these tools feel like a black box, because sometimes they depend on the IT to develop one import script. They will run and they will get the data. Still, it's a black box. There is, so it is hard to reuse also, because if any data within the database, if any data definition change, data dictionary change, I cannot use that again the script. So it's very harder to reuse and to share the scripts. For example, if I have done anything, if I share to others, so there is a, so audits can become slow and inconsistent. Yeah,
Understood. And
I hope
since
I
you
answered the
work,
question.
yeah, you did. And since you work with both scripting tools as well as Nime, like, can you compare your experience working with scripting tools versus working Nime? So, what makes Nime different?
Yeah, Knime is different because of it's a visual, easy to learn instead of writing script, like I mentioned, like an ACL idea. Auditors build their test connecting nodes. You just drag the drop on node interface. It could be import node, or it could be analysis node, it could be visualization node. It's a simple visual programming and drag and drop interface. This makes analytics more transparent. It's not a black box, because you will have a complete visibility. So every step by step, you can document, and it's easy to explain to management. Auditors can quickly set up a wide variety of tests. The advantage is from profiling. It could be finding exception. It could be comparison, fraud detection. Without needing coding skills.
Got it. Understood. So now that the auditors, let's say they've run their analytics tests and they find some exceptions, like what usually happens after that?
Yeah. So once auditor find the exceptions in any tool, it could be desktop when he's using like ACL, IDEA, Excel, or it could be any tool. They have to communicate with the auditee. So the results,
Hmm.
for example, I have when I do the run, I have identified some of the exceptions. It could be threshold limit exceed. It could be duplicate transaction, or it could be any policy violation within the organization. So I have to communicate with the process owner. I have to communicate with the auditee, to get the clarification on the whatever results I have. So then only I can report to the management, right? So this is disjointed. Like exceptions, they usually export into Excel, then they will email them to auditees for clarification. But this process is fragmented, time consuming, it's kind of scattered, and
Un-
it's make it difficult to maintain a single source of truth. This disjointed. So yeah.
Understood. Understood. And how does Knime make this exception management process easier?
Yes, with Knime, all the work happens in one place. You are with using Knime interface, just you connect independently to any data source, import the data, do the data quality checks, data verification, that is data integrity. Then you do your analysis. Based on your analysis, for example, I'm doing the purchase to payment cycle or order to cash, vendor, inventory, it could be anything. Then these exceptions you can communicate through email directly through Nine. Then you
Hmm.
can get the clarifications, everything. So it's all in directly within the platform. This save the time and keeps the process consistent.
Understood. Understood. And so I think for the exception management, it's more about like communication between the auditor and auditee.
Correct.
What about like how do auditors report their findings to management? Like how do they do that?
Exactly. This is another very good question. Like, when I talk about exceptions, I cannot report to the senior board, like a senior board or senior executive management. So usually we give into dashboards how many
Mhm.
exceptions, how many findings, what is the priority, high, low, medium across the departments. So I have to prepare the dashboards, or I have to prepare the charts, or I have to summarize. Often, using another tools like a Power BI, it could be Tableau, like most of the visualization, powerful visual tools. That means switching between tool is inefficient, right? You are exporting the exceptions, then you are using visualization tool to develop the visual report or storyboard. Then you are reporting to the senior management.
Understood. Understood. And from your experience working with Nime, how does Nime make this reporting to management piece easier?
Yeah, the Knime has built-in visualizations, and within the Knime and reporting notes, where auditor can prepare, you know, uh, to management, ready outputs into the same tool. That is the main advantage. So they can also build data apps for interactive view. Means, for example, if I get any exceptions or I want to report, I can develop the data app within single click. The view will go to the senior management, or you can export to any format, or you can integrate with the Power BI or Tableau needed. It's very flexible. Yeah.
Got it. So it gives you the flexibility depending on the organization. So
Yes.
that's awesome. I think, Muzi, those are all the questions I had for you, but I'm sure our audience will have more questions. So we'll invite you back on stage during the audience Q&A. So, but thank you so much for sharing your insights. I mean, you walked us through the entire audit process. You told us about the tools that are used in the process, and you told us how Nime overcomes some of the challenges associated with those tools. So, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Tejas. Thank you very much.
All right. So next, we'd like to switch gears to talk about the Knime for Audit Starter Pack, which we've built in collaboration with our partners Crowe Oman, Amin Data, and Quantify Technologies. The Knime for Audit Starter Pack is essentially a collection of basic tests which most auditors rely on. So things like duplicate transactions, split transactions, suspicious date ranges, and many more. The idea behind the Knime for Audit Starter Pack is to give auditors a practical starting point so that they can jump into Knime and get up and running with Knime as soon as possible. And the great thing, as usual, all of these audit tests have been made available to our community via the Knime Community Hub. So we encourage our community members to go to the Knime Community Hub, download the workflows, use them as is or customize as based on your audit needs. To make this Knime for Audit Starter Pack come to life, I would like to now invite Dash on stage to show a demo of a few of these ready to use audit tests. Over to you, Dash.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tejas. As you've said, I'll jump through a couple examples today of what's available in the starter pack. Specifically, these two will be, as we currently see. I'll focus on split transactions and matched data. Of course, there's a couple others here that might be very interesting to a few of you. Of course, I think it may have been already said, these are available on the Community Hub. So as I'm presenting these, you can definitely go through, download them, and even download them after today's presentation. So you can follow along, try to follow along with some of these data apps. You can also just start playing with them and customizing them as you wish. So with all of these workflows, before we jump into our first one, I just want to say that we've tried to standardize them. So you'll see, especially between the two workflows I'll show today, there's a lot of some similarities, right? Especially when it comes to data validation checks, selecting fields, creating a report, right? A finalized report at the end based off of what kind of audit functionality we're trying to bring to the table. So again, you'll see a lot of similar pages between these two workflows. Let's go to our first workflow, which is split transactions, right? Before we jump in, right, you can see a nice overview of what this workflow looks like with a couple of components, right? We're going to upload a file, look at a few statistics, do data validation, go to our field selection, and then finally this analysis dashboard at the end. Again, what is the goal of this split transactions workflow, right? We have a nice description down below, but really what this workflow is, it's for the case where oftentimes we have a threshold, a limit to what we allow in terms of our transactions, right? It can only be under $10,000 or $50,000. In many cases, individuals will try to split up transactions, right? A large transaction that goes over this limit into smaller transactions. So to get over a 10K limit that we've set up, an individual might take a 15K transaction and instead split it into 5 or 3 different transactions of 5K each. So again, we need a data app, a simplified version to be able to identify all these transactions and mark them off and maybe send a report to a specific individual. So that's what we want to do with this workflow that we see here today. Really, we want to make that process of identifying some of these transactions, these split transactions, easier, more efficient, in a kind of friendlier environment, as we'll see. So I'll run this as a data app. I'll open up a nice data app portal page. Again, as we saw on that first page or that first component within our workflow, we're first going to select, right, what file do we want to work with? With all these workflows that you'll see and you'll be able to download from the Community Hub, they have their own toy data sets already set up. So if you don't select one, right, I could select my own file here, but I won't do that today. I already have this nice toy data set that I can see from here. Once I've uploaded my data, if I wanted to see maybe a nice table graphic as we see here for my selected file, I could just refresh my page, right, with this nice refresh button. We'll keep going along, right? Again, we're doing a few validation tests, right? Maybe first I just want to view the statistics of my data set. Very important, right? I might want to understand, are there any missing values? What's the dimensionality of my data set? Is there anything that stands out? Especially as you being an auditor, you're the expert. You might see something that immediately piques your interest, right? Whether that's related to split transactions or just related to data integrity overall. So I'll click next. Everything looks fine. Now we get into some more standardized pieces within all of these different workflows in the Audit Starter Pack. One of these, again, is the data validation tests. We saw earlier, we have a nice component here working with data validation. We're at that exact step. And there's a number of different validation processes, right? I could do date validation, string validation. All this makes sure that all the fields are valid, right? We don't have any kind of corrupt text. We don't have any missing values that maybe we didn't identify on the previous page, right? If I pull in a vendor's name or a vendor ID, right, I'll get a nice text, right? Is there missing values? In this case, there's no missing fields found for any of those rows in those two columns. Perfect. I'm fine with that. I'll move on. Also, with all of these, especially since you're going to be using hopefully your own data, right? Not just the toy data that we have installed. You'll need to identify a few different fields that may be named differently in your own data set, right? The vendor ID field, the approver field, the transaction date field, the invoice date field, et cetera, et cetera. For each of these different workflows, you're going to have different fields that you may need to select, right? There's a couple here I need to select, but in a few other examples, I may need to just select one or two. It just depends on the type of audit functionality that we're looking at. Again, I'm fine with that. I'll click next. And now I get closer to that finalized report that I want to generate, right? But now I'm actually looking at split transactions, right? We've identified what data set we want to use. We viewed a few validation tests just to make sure everything looks correct. And now we're going into actual split transaction visualizations and analysis. So there's a few things I can change here, right? I can look at, what's my day threshold for transactions or split transactions? What's my dollar amount threshold for transactions as well? And then based off of these, I'm pulling information about all the different vendors I'm working with, all these different individuals. And as I select these, you'll see that they'll pop up and I can actually view the amount as well, right? The split, whether or not it's been deemed as split or normal. And I can jump through all different windows of these different vendors that I'm working with. That's perfect. But this, again, is just kind of a quick look at an interactive way to view the data. I may actually want to send that report, right? We want that finalized conclusion. We want to send the report to myself or to the other auditors or to maybe my boss or to a customer, right? So we'll click next. And now we're at the final piece of our workflow, right? Again, if we jump back to that workflow view, we're right at this analysis dashboard. Again, with this, there's a few different options we can choose here. I'm not going to choose any of those for now. We're just going to stick with full report. But as we can see, right, I can change a few different cases about this as I'm defining my report, how I want it generated. I can say, hey, I'm Dash. I'm the individual that's going to be preparing this, so I want that information included. What's my project name? Maybe I can just call this initial. I can generate that report, and things will, right, again, update. What's also nice about all of these workflows, especially with all these different use cases, right, like match data, split transactions, right, suspicious dates, we're going to have an analysis description as well as how we're using some of our analytics to go about, right, identifying split transactions or doing a match data process or fuzzy matching or identifying suspicious dates. So we'll have information here so that the individual looking at that finalized report, even yourself using the data app, have a better understanding of what exactly is happening behind the scenes, right? We'll have our detailed reports, a few individuals, right? In this case, we highlighted the Miller Group on the previous page, so that's who we're looking at. And then I'll download a report, right? I can pop this open and I can have something nice that I can download or email off to other individuals, again, whether it's a customer or someone within the company. So that's looking at the full report. But we had two other options as well, right? There's the current execution. This is really just, hey, I don't need that finalized report. I just want a nice Excel sheet or CSV file that has, the table, that finalized table that we've identified, right? Some cases that's perfect. We don't need that full report. What's also nice is, let's just say that I want to send an exception instead, right? If I refresh the page, what I can do here, right, is I can include some information about the split status. If I scroll down, I can also send an exception email, right? We've tried to standardize this within all these different workflows. But I can say, hey, let's send this to this individual, CC, etc. Enter my subject, and then I can describe the issue as well. So again, with all of these different workflows, you're going to have all these different options, just more based around different functionality, but everything should really be standardized. So that was split transactions. What I want to do next is show off another workflow, just to prove out that we've standardized a few things between these different workflows and kind of what to expect. The next one I want to show is match data, right? Match data is also an important part of auditor's function. In this case, right, we want to make sure that an individual, maybe a separate employee, they might be trying to mask themselves as someone that they're not, right? In this case, right, we have some employee data and some vendor data, and we're trying to identify employees that are copying vendor information to, right, try to present themselves as those vendors, or maybe it's been incorrectly copied over from a Excel sheet or some other kind of file format. So with this, again, we want to have a file upload process where I can bring in multiple files. So unlike the last workflow, I'm going to bring in, right, more than just one file. I want to get statistics of both of those files. I want to do data validation for both those files, and then get a finalized dashboard as we saw earlier. So again, things will be extremely similar. Again, I'll just run this as a data app so we can jump through all these different pages. But again, right, as we saw, I need to upload maybe that employee data set and that vendor data set, whatever I've already selected. Again, I'll stick with the defaults, but I could always select these and choose my own toy data set, or in this case, real world data set. With this too, I'd be able to go through and identify what are the statistics of the data sets, right? The dimensionality, the missing values, etc. I'm fine with that. We'll do different validation tests. Again, I can choose between my different data sets as well, what I've uploaded. And then I can go into, hey, let's look at numeric validation, missing value validation, date boundary range validation, etc. I'm fine with that, right? Again, working with toy data, I already know everything's correct, so we can move forward with the presentation. As we saw in the last workflow, right, I had a field selection page just so, the columns in the toy data set may not match exactly what you have in your real world, like your raw data set. So I just need to make a few selections, identify those columns as what I want to use, that it has the information that pertains to what I would expect. So in this case, I'm trying to find these matching columns that I want to compare to each other. I'll click next. And then, right, we're now on that finalized analysis dashboard. So I can look at a full report, current execution. I can send an exception email, right, just like what we saw before. And with each of these, right, I can go through, select these options, and they will, as you see, right, they'll execute, they'll be interactive, so I can play with the data itself. As we saw earlier, right, I can generate my reports, make it more specific to my reporting period. As we also see, right, I have a nice description of the usage of the analytic process and the analytic description. And as I go through, right, just like before, I'll have that PDF that I can download, as we saw. So those were the two that I want to show off. But again, with all of these different workflows, they're all going to be very, very similar, right? Fuzzy name matching, if we click into this one, we'll see that I'll have file upload. I'll get my statistics of the data set. I can look at data validation, and I'll have that analysis dashboard. If we go to incorrect totals, same thing. So there's a lot of similarities. It's just that some of the analysis, a small piece, right, is changing, right? We're doing incorrect total functionality or comparison versus just matched data comparison versus matched or fuzzy matching comparison. So there's a lot of different pieces here, but if you get to know one of these, if you suddenly need to bring on, let's say, the transaction aging workflow, you'll already know, hey, I expect to have these pages. I already know how to work with them, and it's pretty easy. So that's what I wanted to show off. What I want to do now is open it back up to Q&A and bring everybody else on so we can start answering any questions anyone might have on anything they've seen or maybe things that they haven't seen in today's presentation.
Thanks, Dash. And I think we have all of us on stage. We did have a few submissions in the Q&A tab, so maybe we can just go through this. So the first question, Muzeeb, this is more likely for you. Can you give some examples of audit substantiative testing where you've migrated from Excel or other tools to Knime?
Yeah. So from Excel to Knime, as I mentioned, there is a easily interface drag and drop. Just you can drag and drop Excel within the Knime. Then there is a workflow. The notes are available for substantial testing within the Knime platform.
Got it. And I think just to add to that, so we do have resources for that as well. We have an Excel to Knime ebook, which can be used for if you are doing a lot of your testing in Excel. If you want to replicate that in Knime, we do have resources for that as well. And this Knime for Audit Starter Pack also, if you are running analytical tests in some sort of like scripting tools, I would really highly recommend going through some of the tests that we've built out in the Knime for Audit Starter Pack, because those would be a good start to start shifting some of your scripting related analytical tests into Knime as well. Okay, let's see, what do we have next? So the next question is maybe for you, Dash. The question is there a way to keep all the workflows in a single location with access and version control?
Yes. What I would say the best option for that would be the Business Hub, where you give, again, a team, you have a space that individuals have access to. And that is kind of the ground truth of those workflows. And that if you can give individuals the ability to edit those workflows as well, maybe just a select few or none at all. And then there is version control so that, you might take the workflows that you see today and again, maybe take those fields that we saw and really make them default to what you would expect in your own kind of raw data coming forward. The Business Hub would be perfect for that, and it has kind of the functionality I think you're looking for.
Got it. Maybe this is a question for you, Muzeeb. Access to data from ERPs is often a hurdle as IT teams are reluctant to give us access. They often revert to giving us reports. How do you see this evolving in the industry, given that it is often the biggest blocker?
Yeah. So let's agree, this is one of the biggest bottleneck where we are talking about analytics. So every analytical platform have their own analysis, but connecting to the ERP, extracting the data is very challenging. As I mentioned, as a non-technical auditor here using Knime, you can using this connector, you can connect to the ERP, you can import the data. You no need to depend on the reports. As auditor, you should independently connect to the raw data because the reports is transformed, right? So to make sure whatever internal controls within the organization, like for example, now in starter pack, incorrect totals. In if you take any scenario in SAP, one of the ERP, the control inbuilt control is like they are calculating unit price and quantity. Then we are getting the total. So if I take the report, I will not get any exceptions. If I connect to the ERP, then import, then recalculate using the incorrect totals workflow, you will get the variance. Then you can see some of the in ERP round function. One of the an example is in the round function will round the data. That's kind of a differences you can find with the Knime, using these workflows. So if I answer question, yes, the Knime will help to the connect to the ERP through ODBC or native connectors. It could be like the question is ERP, but if you talk about MS Dynamics or SAP or it could be any database, so only they should familiar with the data dictionary, which required fields, to import. That is the only challenge. Otherwise, there is no big challenge.
Got it. And just to add to that, because I think the question was also asking about how do we get IT to give auditors access directly to the ERP versus giving data dumps. So I think a
Yeah,
simple answer which we've seen with some of our business hub customers is involve IT early in the process and tell them what you're trying to do. Even from an IT perspective, right? They don't want to do those data pulls for audit. It's just that since they're not comfortable giving access, so on the Nine Business Hub in particular, we have this functionality called the secret store where you can manage credentials in a centralized location. Maybe Dash,
yeah,
can you quickly elaborate on the secret store so that I think because that helps IT get around the blocker of how do we make sure that auditors have access to ERPs in a controlled fashion.
Yeah, great point. The secret store itself, individuals can, especially the business hub admin, can share secrets via that, and individuals will have access to those secrets. However, you're when individuals are working with those secrets from the business hub, they don't actually have access to any of the credentials. They have access, they can plug in that secret and say, hey, I want to use Snowflake. And based off of whatever secret has been shared with them, they would have access to Snowflake, but they wouldn't have access to any of the secure credentials that maybe they could copy somewhere else. And you'd be worried about, again, in an IT forum, sharing or giving unclear access to these individuals. So the secret store is great, and it's not just for. I think it's for almost any kind of credential under the sun. It works with. I think we have a lot of individuals playing with Snowflake, with AWS, right, with Google, but we also have a lot of resources around. A lot that I haven't said on the secret store. We do have a few documentations around that.
Got
yeah. I
it.
would like to add one thing, and when auditors request, it's a read-only access. Usually, IT, afraid about if you give access, there could be editable, non-editable. They can edit or delete. So here, Nine when you connect, it's only read-only access, and you cannot edit the data from the source. And if they are afraid, instead of giving to the production, they can give testing environment where we can have stages like yeah, to answer multiple ways that its, yes, always they're afraid because of their second line, they are the owners. As a auditor independently, when we connect, that they will not allow. So that these are the tools and the techniques will help to request IT. Yeah, we are doing the audit, this process, ERP vendor, these fields who need only read only access will connect to see insights instead of like a backward looking. As I mentioned in the first slide, if I get export, postmortem kind of thing, backward looking. So we want to have visibility, insights. Even we are talking about foresight. So we should move forward for audit function, towards modern audit function. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. So another question slightly related, maybe this one's for you, Dash. So if if only one team member has access to a database using their own login, how can other team members run the workflows without having direct access? Do all users need individual database credentials, or is there an alternative solution within Knime?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, we would probably fall back on the secret store idea that we brought up in the previous question. And there's different options with that. It just depends on your IT setup, how secure you want it to be. Because you could definitely have workflows that use secrets, but just like with the Business Hub, you can have different levels of user access. So you can have individuals that don't have any kind of edit access to these workflows. So may actually not have the ability to pull in some of these credentials that you have in these workflows. So they'd be able to run those. But I really think having maybe kind of a service account with some of those databases and just having that as a secret is a more stable, less prone to kind of any kind of security fault with your workflows. A very good question.
Got it. So essentially, more likely to use service accounts and making sure the service accounts have the right access via the secret store. Okay.
That's what I would think. Again, it depends on your IT and security preferences,
Protocols,
but that's
yeah.
usually what I find.
Agreed. So we had one more question, which I think we answered. So I think these workflows are in Knime. So the workflows that Dash showed are actually on the Knime community hub. So they are available for everyone in our community. And as a follow-up, we will share the links to the community hub teams so that everyone who has registered for this webinar can get access to those right away. Let's see. We have one more question for you, Muzeeb. How do you interact with auditees? Do you provide them access to Knime, or do you send them Excel files containing a list of cases which they should respond to?
Yeah, in a Knime, you can interact with the auditee directly. We can integrate with Outlook, or it could be MS Exchange email, Exchange server, so that through Node directly the exceptions will go to the email. They can respond to email, then they will get the responses within the Knime. So we will not provide access to the Knime. We can send through Knime, or if it is Business Hub, we have apps where they can share interactive views. They can communicate. You would like to add on the Business Hub, you can add it. Yeah.
Yeah. One more question for you, Muzeeb. So I think the question is worded a bit weird, but like, how many of your audit staff are involved with using Knime, and what are their skill sets? Are they basic analytical skills or just curiosity to use Knime? So I think this is more like an onboarding question. Like how easy is it to get auditors to learn Knime essentially?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the main objective of this session, where I have worked with more than many customers, I have seen the transformation using data-driven audit. So Knime, in my organizations we have more than 100 auditors, so we have 20 to 25 certified. It's a open source, so everyone learned, easy to use. They're non-technical, and they're developing independently on the data. They're doing even sometimes if required sampling also, they are doing some kind of a techniques, sampling techniques, and they're doing 100% population. They're developing visualizations. They're very familiar.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Muzi. I think that's all the questions we have time for today. So I think thank you everyone for joining this. Thank you, Muzi. Thank you, Dash, for joining us and sharing your insights and demos with us. I think if for anyone in the audience who would like to know more about how Knime can improve your audit functions, please use the contact us button and reach out to us. And stay tuned for our next webinar in the Knime for Audit webinar series on October 14th. Thank you everyone for your time.